George Washington, the man who could have been king but chose to be president. In 1789, he set every precedent that would follow: the two-term tradition, the cabinet system, the very idea of peaceful transfer of power. Washington knew he was creating a template for history, and he refused a salary, serving out of duty alone. John Adams. John Adams followed, our second president and first to live in the White House. His presidency was marked by the quasi-war with France and the controversial Alien and Sedition Acts, which tested the limits of free speech in the young republic. Thomas Jefferson. Then came Thomas Jefferson, the philosopher-president who doubled the size of America with the Louisiana Purchase in 1803. For just $15 million, he acquired 827,000 square miles, fundamentally transforming the nation's destiny. Yet this champion of liberty owned over 600 enslaved people throughout his lifetime, a contradiction that haunts his legacy. James Madison. James Madison, the father of the Constitution, led America through the War of 1812. When British forces burned Washington, D.C. in 1814, including the White House, it was one of the darkest moments in American history. Yet the nation survived, and the war ended with a renewed sense of American identity. James Monroe. James Monroe's presidency brought the era of good feelings and the Monroe Doctrine, declaring the Western Hemisphere off-limits to European colonization. America was finding its voice on the world stage. John Quincy Adams, the only president whose father was also president, served just one term but spent 17 years in Congress afterward, becoming the only president to do so. Andrew Jackson. The populist warrior president reshaped American democracy, for better and worse. He expanded voting rights for white men while forcing thousands of Native Americans on the Trail of Tears, resulting in thousands of deaths. Martin Van Buren. Martin Van Buren took office during a tough time, inheriting the economic problems left by Andrew Jackson. The Panic of 1837 hit hard, causing bank failures, unemployment, and business closures. Despite trying to fix things with new Treasury measures, his presidency was mostly remembered for the financial crisis. William Henry Harrison. William Henry Harrison had the shortest presidency in U.S. history, serving just 31 days in 1841. He caught pneumonia soon after his inauguration and died, making his time in office one of the briefest and most remembered for how quickly it ended. John Tyler. John Tyler, nicknamed his Accidency, became the first vice president to take over the presidency after the death of a president. James K. Polk. James K. Polk is often considered one of the most effective one-term presidents. In just 4 years, he expanded the United States by adding California, New Mexico, and Oregon, helping the country stretch from the Atlantic to the Pacific. Zachary Taylor, a celebrated war hero, became president in 1849, but served only 16 months. Owning over 100 enslaved people, his time in office ended suddenly and mysteriously with his death, leaving questions and making his brief presidency one of the shortest in U.S. history. Millard Fillmore became president after Zachary Taylor's death and faced growing tensions over slavery. His time in office is best known for the Compromise of 1850, an effort to keep the Union together, though it only offered a temporary solution to the country's deepening divisions. Franklin Pierce struggled with weak leadership at a time when tensions over slavery were rising. His inability to take strong action allowed conflicts to grow, and his pro-slavery sympathies further angered opponents, setting the stage for the nation's slide towards civil war. James Buchanan faced one of the toughest periods in U.S. history. His weak leadership and support for pro-slavery policies failed to stop the crisis, and by the end of his presidency, 7 states had seceded, leaving the Union on the brink of collapse. Abraham Lincoln, the rail splitter from Illinois, became president during America's darkest hour. He led the country through the Civil War, preserved the Union, and ended slavery with the Emancipation Proclamation. His Gettysburg Address inspired a nation, giving new meaning to freedom and the American purpose. But on April 14, 1865, just days after Confederate surrender, John Wilkes Booth assassinated Lincoln at Ford's Theater, the first presidential assassination, a tragedy that robbed America of the leader who could have healed its wounds. Andrew Johnson. Andrew Johnson, a Southern Democrat who opposed secession but resisted rights for freed slaves, became president after Lincoln's assassination. His constant clashes with Congress over Reconstruction policies led to his impeachment, making him the first president to face this, though he narrowly avoided removal from office by one vote. Ulysses S. Grant. Ulysses S. Grant, the Union general who helped win the Civil War, faced challenges as president. His administration was plagued by corruption scandals, yet he worked hard to protect the rights of African Americans during Reconstruction. Rutherford Hayes. Rutherford Hayes won the highly disputed 1876 election through the Compromise of 1877, which gave him the presidency in exchange for ending Reconstruction. This decision left African Americans in the South unprotected, paving the way for nearly a century of Jim Crow laws and oppression. James Garfield. James Garfield served only 200 days before being shot by a delusional office seeker. He died not from the bullet, but from infections caused by doctors using unsterilized instruments to probe for it. Chester Arthur A. Chester Arthur A., once seen as untrustworthy vice president, surprised the nation when he became president. He pushed for civil service reform, helping reduce government corruption and proving that he could lead with integrity despite doubts about his character. Grover Cleveland. Grover Cleveland is the only president to serve non-consecutive terms, making him both the 22nd and 24th president. Benjamin Harrison served as president between Grover Cleveland's two terms. He is best remembered for being the grandson of former President William Henry Harrison. William McKinley led the United States into the Spanish-American War in 1898, turning the nation into an emerging imperial power with territories like the Philippines, Puerto Rico, and Guam. His presidency was cut short when an anarchist assassinated him in 1901. Theodore Roosevelt. Theodore Roosevelt at 42 became the youngest president ever. Speak softly and carry a big stick defined his foreign policy. He built the Panama Canal, created national parks, and broke up monopolies. He reshaped the presidency into a powerful force for change. William Howard Taft. William Howard Taft, handpicked by Theodore Roosevelt, struggled to meet his mentor's progressive expectations. His more conservative approach caused a rift with Roosevelt, splitting the Republican Party and paving the way for Wilson to win the presidency in the next election. Woodrow Wilson. Woodrow Wilson, a former Princeton professor, became president and led the United States into World War I, aiming to make the world safe for democracy. Wilson's presidency ended in tragedy. He suffered a massive stroke in 1919, and his wife Edith essentially ran the country for his final 17 months, one of history's best-kept secrets. Warren G. Harding. Warren G. Harding promised a return to normalcy after World War I, appealing to a nation ready for peace. His presidency, however, was marred by corruption scandals, and he died suddenly in 1923, leaving a controversial legacy despite his popular campaign promises. Calvin Coolidge. Calvin Coolidge, known for being quiet and frugal, led the country during the Roaring Twenties. His presidency saw booming economic growth and prosperity, but underneath, financial problems were growing that would soon lead to the stock market crash and the Great Depression. Herbert Hoover. Herbert Hoover, known for his humanitarian work, became president just as the Great Depression hit in 1929. Despite his experience and efforts, he struggled to address the economic collapse, and his inability to manage the crisis overshadowed his presidency and popularity. Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, paralyzed by polio, could not walk, but he lifted the nation during its darkest times. Elected 4 times, he reshaped government with the New Deal, and later led the Allies in World War II, playing a key role in defeating fascism. He died in April 1945, just weeks before victory in Europe. Harry Truman. Harry Truman, a modest former haberdasher from Missouri, became president during the final months of World War II. He faced the monumental decision to drop atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, ending the war but leaving a lasting impact on global history. Dwight Eisenhower. Dwight Eisenhower, former Supreme Allied Commander, led the United States during the early Cold War. He warned the nation about the dangers of the military-industrial complex, while also strengthening America's nuclear arsenal, balancing caution with a commitment to national defense and global influence. John F. Kennedy. John F. Kennedy, just 43 when he became president, brought energy and charisma to the White House. During the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, the world came close to nuclear war, but his calm and steady leadership helped steer the United States safely through. His assassination in Dallas on November 22, 1963, traumatized the nation. Lyndon B. Johnson. Lyndon B. Johnson, known for his legislative skill, passed major laws like the Civil Rights Act and created Medicare, shaping the Great Society. However, his presidency was overshadowed by the Vietnam War, which drained resources and divided the nation. Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon opened relations with China and achieved détente with the Soviet Union. But Watergate, the cover-up of a break-in at Democratic headquarters, ended his presidency. He remains the only president to resign, leaving office in disgrace in August 1974. Gerald Ford. Gerald Ford became president after Nixon's resignation and is remembered for pardoning him, a controversial decision at the time. Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter, a humble peanut farmer, focused on human rights and honesty in government. His presidency, however, was overshadowed by the Iran hostage crisis and economic problems like high inflation and slow growth, making his time in office a challenging period for both him and the nation. Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan, former actor, brought optimism and confidence back to the nation. His presidency included memorable moments like challenging the Soviet Union to tear down this wall and overseeing the Cold War's final years. George H.W. Bush. George H.W. Bush led the country during major events like the end of the Cold War and the Gulf War. But despite these successes, his famous promise of no new taxes backfired, damaging his popularity and contributing to his loss in the next election. Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton led the United States through a period of peace and economic growth in the 1990s, balancing the budget and reforming welfare. His presidency, however, was clouded by a scandal involving Monica Lewinsky, which led to his impeachment, though he was later acquitted. George W. Bush. George W. Bush lost the popular vote but won the Electoral College in the controversial 2000 election. His presidency was soon defined by the September 11th attacks in 2001 that killed nearly 3,000 Americans, which reshaped U.S. foreign policy and led to wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. Barack Obama. Barack Obama made history in 2008 as the first African-American president. He helped stabilize the economy after the financial crisis, passed the Affordable Care Act to expand health care, and authorized the raid that killed Osama bin Laden. Donald Trump. Donald Trump, a businessman and reality TV star with no political background, stunned the world by winning the 2016 election. His presidency was marked by constant controversy, 2 impeachments, a trade war with China, and a widely criticized COVID-19 response that contributed to massive loss of life. He refused to accept his 2020 defeat, culminating in the January 6, 2021 attack on the Capitol. Joe Biden. Joe Biden became the oldest president ever inaugurated at 78. His presidency has focused on rebuilding the country's infrastructure through major legislation and leading the Western response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. If you made it this far, you just witnessed 250 years of American history in under 15 minutes. Which president surprised you the most? Who do you think was the greatest, the worst? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want more deep dives into history, politics, and the stories that shaped our world, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.